We are here at the top of page 2, continuing on 1.6, where we're looking at subtracting real numbers, positives and negatives, and not being afraid to face the fractions, decimals, even the irrationals along the way, as we did at the bottom of page 1. And you'll notice that things start to quickly move in a direction of a little bit more challenge. If you've been practicing the steps all along, you're going to become you're going to be comfortable and you're going to be confident in what you are doing, and you'll still be able to apply the steps and get the right answers here. So the instructions say, and I can't emphasize enough, when the problems start to look different than what you're used to, you're just going along, everything's great, and then hit a little speed bump. Whoa, this looks different. Ask yourself why it looks different, and also make sure you take the time to read the instructions. So it says to simplify each series of additions and subtractions, which means that you've got several problems kind of lined up in one row to do. Okay? And again, simplify means that we're combining like terms, we're removing any parentheses that we can. Sometimes that will require distribution. And in this case, like terms, we don't see any variables here, but that means we've got all constants, and so those will be what we want to combine. So let's look at what these two examples would look like. And I just want to say that as the problems get more challenging too, you can also bring some of your own knowledge, bring some of the tools that mathematics offers you. You can use the properties, what we talked about earlier in the chapter, the commutative property to move things around, the associative property to regroup, and take this problem in ways that make sense to you or make it easier for you. Okay? Order of operations will always work as well. Especially when we don't have any variables involved. Order of operations will never hit a roadblock where we can't go any further. So I'll just make a note of that. To use your power of what you know, so use the power of your knowledge to best fit the situation. In this case, it might be order of operations would be the best way to go, or the way that's most comfortable for you, most confident. Or you might want to use properties, like commutative or associative. And I'll abbreviate those so I don't run too much into my workspace here. Okay, let's read this. -6 minus a -3, parentheses here just highlighting, hey, I'm a negative, plus 8 minus 11. So order of operations says we just need to take addition and subtraction as they come to us left to right. I'm going to take that even one step further and say we're in the section where we're practicing subtracting positive negative numbers. The steps that I'm advocating for you is to change every subtraction to adding the opposite. So I'm going to go through right now and change every subtraction to adding the opposite. I'm going to change this to add, and that second number, make that the opposite of what we see. So I've got a -6 minus, I'm going to make that adding a +3. Plus 8, I don't have to do anything to the add. But then I've got minus 11, so I'm going to change that to adding the opposite. And right now, when you don't see it, it's a positive, so we're going to change that to the opposite. So this is going to become plus a +3. This is going to become plus a -11 as we add the opposite. Let's fill in all the other stuff here. I just bring down the -6. I bring down the plus 8, and I can make that +8 to make it real clear where my sign is, where my operation is. And in this particular one, I don't see any numbers jumping out that would want me to combine these in any particular order, make it easier for me to pull things out. Now, some of you might look at this and go, I'd like to deal with the negatives first, or I'd like to deal with the two positives first. You're more than welcome to use the properties. For this particular example, on the notes, I'm going to go ahead and do order of operations and just take them as they come left to right. So I've got a -6 plus a +3. Those are different signs, so I'm going to subtract, and 6 minus 3 is 3, and I keep the sign of the bigger number, it's -3. Okay. Okay. And then I bring down everything that I have left here. Let's go ahead and bring down the plus a positive 8 plus a negative 11. And then I look at the next two that I've got. Again, I just keep going left to right, take the very next two things. And we've set everything to be adding because that's how our process right now. I've got different signs again, negative 3 plus a positive 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. I keep the sign of the bigger number, so this is going to become a positive 5. And then I continue to just bring everything down. I've got a plus a negative 11. Plus a negative 11 here. And one last set of addition. Signs are different. We've got positive 5 plus a negative 11. So we subtract. I get 6. 11 minus 5 is 6. I keep the sign of the bigger number. This answer is negative 6. Okay. Again, you are welcome to do some in your head. I would caution against that until you've done several of the problems and applying those steps. Especially if if at first glance the problem made you go, what? That looks a little different, or wow, if you felt that little knot in your stomach, oh, this is going to be a challenge. Take the time to write out the steps. That way, maybe you can catch any errors along the way, but secondly, if you check the back of the book, your answer happens to be wrong, you now have a little record of evidence that you can comb through and find where the mistake happened, okay? So let's look at number 68. We've got fractions involved. No fear with fractions. Get the help you need if you're still stuck. And that one, the first one I used order of operations. So I think I'll just note that here. I used order of operations here. Here I'm going to use the properties. And the reason why I'm choosing to use properties here, meaning I'm going to choose to switch things around, maybe regroup, because I've got fractions involved. And fractions mean that I want to have like denominators when I'm adding or subtracting. And so I see that I'm starting out with 1/2, 2/3, 1/3. I love that I've got two matching denominators at least to start. And so that makes me want to not go left to right. It makes me want to take care of the two matchings first. That's going to reduce the number of times I have to change the denominator or find a least common denominator. But let's start with, like we did with the other one, because the steps don't change here. I'm going to change every subtraction to an addition problem, because that helps us be able to understand what are we doing. Is it minus? Is it plus? Is it positive? Is it negative? Where's all the signs? If you change every subtraction to an addition, where we add the opposite, okay, eliminates all those questions. So in this case, I've got a negative 1/2. I'm going to change this minus 2/3 to adding the opposite. Okay, it is a positive right now, so that's going to change to become a negative. Then we have a subtraction of a negative 1/3. So again, I'm going to add the opposite. This one's going to become add the opposite here. Okay. Notice I use an arrow and I'm writing some notes to myself so that I'm just very clear now as I recopy the problem what this is going to look like. So I've got negative 1/2. Okay. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here. Negative 1/2. Adding the opposite is going to be adding a positive 2/3. So plus a positive 2/3. Okay. Then I'm going to add the opposite of what I see here. I'm going to add a positive 1/3. And now I'm going to use the properties here. The associative properties tells me that I can take whichever group I want and add those first because it's all addition now. Okay. Remember, you can associate over addition, and we talked about it when we did the properties. If you think of subtraction as adding the opposite, you will always have all addition, and then you can regroup and switch things around as much as you like to your advantage. In this case, we have the advantage we can group together the positive 2/3 plus the positive 1/3. We have same signs. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not. It's add the opposites. It's the opposite of the... Sorry, I wanted to check that to make sure I had all the signs right. It's, instead of subtracting 2/3, it's going to be adding a negative 2/3. So we have different signs here, negative 2/3, positive 1/3. So we subtract 2/3 minus 1/3 is going to be 1/3, top minus the top. Keep that sign of the bigger number, so this becomes a negative 1/3. And then we have a negative 1/2 here still. Now we're adding, we're still adding. We've got same signs. We're going to be adding these together, but now we have unlike denominators. So we want to find the least common denominator. In this case, it's going to be 6. I'm going to just make these a little bit bigger, a little easier to read. Now we have the space. So 2 times what will get us to 6? 2 times 3. So I multiply top and bottom of this first fraction by 3 to get that common denominator of 6. So you end up with a negative 3/6. We're still adding. The negative 1/3, it's still going to be negative, but now we need to convert 1/3 to a denominator of 6. 3 times 2 gives us 6, so we need to multiply top and bottom by that 2. So it becomes negative 2/6. Again, if that part converting to the least common denominator, at this point you need to have that solid. You need to have that as a skill. So if you're not caught up to that yet, you haven't refreshed enough, make sure you get some outside help through me or some other resources. Or if you aren't sure where to turn, please see me. Now we've got adding, same signs. We combine the tops. 3 and 2 is 5. We keep that sign, negative 5. Negative 5/6 is our answer. So take a moment to talk it through, copy this, highlight any questions you have. Sorry I goofed that little positive negative sign, but what you see on the paper here and what you heard me say the second time through is correct. And make sure it really makes sense what's happening here, because we're stepping it up. And then you can decide, whichever one of these was more of a little bit of a struggle for you, you pick which one you want to try. You might want to try both, but I did picked 2 tries that were very similar. Several integers in a row here to add, and then a second one involving fractions. So try those, hit the pause button, and then come back and we'll reveal the answers. Alright, and after trying 60 and 64, number 60 you should get negative 42. On number 64 you should get negative 15/8, or if you wrote that as negative 1 and 7/8, that would be fine too. Sometimes the book converts it back to a mixed number, sometimes it leaves it improper. If they aren't in a particular context, like chapter 4 when we're in linear equations, the context is we're using fractions as slope and therefore keeping it in improper form where the top is bigger than the bottom is more helpful to us. But for now, don't get too caught up in what do you want me to do. Know that both of these are equivalent. That's going to be your best strategy. You put negative 15/8, the book says negative 1 and 7/8. You know they're equal, so you're fine. Unless the directions specifically say finish in a mixed or finish in an improper. Knowing that these two are equivalent is going to be your most powerful asset right now. Okay, and we will then see you at the bottom of the page.